Guys, there you go. It should be recording.
Okay. I think I'm good enough technology. Just become more involved. Thank you for coming this evening. For those of you who don't know me, I think most of you probably do. My name is Cant Brown. I am the director of Gifted and Accelerated Learning in Scottsdale. I've been here. This is starting my third year. I came to you from Paradise Valley, where I was there for about 15 years. And prior to that, because my husband was active duty military, I was just about everywhere. And which means I taught everything from kindergarten up through graduate school, with the exception of I never taught a full year of fourth grade, and I never taught a full year with 11th graders. I got everybody else. When you are military like that and you go to a new place and they say, so what do you teach? You reply with what you have open. That will be what I'm going to teach. I will admit to you that the most difficult year of my life was kindergarten. It takes a special person to teach kindergarten. I'll let you know right now I am not that person. Oh, that was a struggle. So tonight we're going to talk about the expected and unexpected challenges of teaching gifted learners, of having these children in your home. I am the mother of 5. 3 of my children are gifted identified. 1 of my children is profoundly gifted. I don't know where he came from. He is not my fault. And I have at many times sent condolence cards to his teacher saying, I am so sorry. I did my best. They're a unique group, and I love them dearly. I come to this gifted arena kind of through a back door, in that my undergrad degree was in elementary education and special education. And then I started working with some of my special education kids and realized, wait a minute, there's something else that's going on with these children. And that's how I got into working with gifted and ended up getting a master's degree in gifted education and have been in the gifted world ever since. And I love the gifted world. It's a fun place. But I'll be honest with you, as a parent, it's not an easy place. It would be so much easier if these children came with manuals that told us what we were supposed to do or not do with them. So we're going to talk about a few things tonight. So the first thing we're going to talk about is, who is this kid? Who is this child that I have who does things in such a way that I kind of get caught off guard at times? Giftedness is not about how smart a child is. Giftedness is actually about how their brain is processing information. Their brain is processing information differently, which means that it's all about how they think and what they think. So I have this little shamu here to remind me to share with you the story of my youngest son, who was not quite 3. We were living in San Antonio, Texas, and we had gone to SeaWorld in San Antonio. They just opened one. Our kids were so excited. We were going to SeaWorld. And about 3, 4 months later, one of my older boys came in and said, Mom, make him stop. Well, I knew who they were talking about, Eric. I said, why? What's wrong? He's just mumbling. All right, so I went in. They had bunk beds. I sat down on the bottom bunk bed with Eric, and I said, what's the matter? Mom, I can't stop thinking about it. Okay. What can you not stop thinking about? The whales. The whales. Okay. What about the whales? You know you went to SeaWorld? Yes. Now that was 4 months ago and you were 2 at the time. Yes. And you know how they have the whales in the big tanks? Yes. How do they get the whales in the big tanks? Mommy, there is no ocean. Mommy, whales can't swim on the river. Mommy, they're saltwater animals. Okay. Number 1, I didn't know that you knew saltwater and freshwater, but I'm okay with this. I said, honey, Mommy's not sure how they get the whales in the tank. Sure, I'll find out. Now thinking that, okay, I've answered his question. He knows that I'm going to go find out. We're going to, can you do it now? Now? Sure, why not? Okay. So I walked out, said to my husband, any idea how they get the whales in the tank? And he said, a big truck. That'll work. Went in and said, well, hey, I think that the way they get the whales in the tank is they have a big truck and they have a sling that the whale rides in and it's got a big tank and they drive it from the ocean and then they put it in the tank. Are you sure? Yes. I'm sure. All right, you're sure. He went to bed. I'm thinking, okay, good. I gave him an answer. He's golden. We're good. Next morning, he's at my bed at 5 a.m. Mommy. Yes. Where do they get a truck big enough? This went on for days, to the point that Mommy called SeaWorld to say, how do you get the whale there? I need to know now. Because nothing I said, and by the way, I was right. They do use a big truck. Okay? I want credit for being right. When we look at gifted kids, one size does not fit all, because they come in every shape and size. And when we think about gifted identification, we have to remember that just as within a typical classroom, we have ranges, within a gifted classroom, we also have ranges. And then when you add the fact that they can be very asynchronous, they're very different kids. Which is one reason why when someone says to me, well, gifted kids, they'll be okay. They're smart, right? There's no research to support that they'll be okay. There's nothing that says they don't need a different type of education. So, they need something different. As a parent, what are some of the things that you noticed first? Well, sometimes parents say, well, they talked early. Other parents will tell you, oh, they talked late. Some parents will tell you, well, they read early. Other parents will say, no, they didn't read early. In fact, it took a long time for them to read. Some parents will tell you that they have sensory issues. They can't stand that tag in the back of their shirt, or the fact that their sock has a seam on it, or things are too loud when they're not loud at all, or the light is too bright. Some parents will tell you, well, they struggle with change. They don't like change. They don't like transitions. I have to warn my child. Some parents noticed that they were full of questions about everything. Other parents said, well, I actually didn't think they were gifted. I just thought we were going to really be in for a role because they melted down over little things. And then parents talk about asynchrony. They're all of those things. They're all of those things. Because for every child who talked early, there's a child who talked late. For every child who read early, there's a child who read late. For every child who has sensory issues, there's a child who doesn't. For every child who was full of questions, there's a child who just observes the world. They come in every shape and size. So how am I supposed to know as a parent whether my kid is a gifted kid or not? My first child was gifted. Well, how was I supposed to know that? He walked early, he talked early. Okay. I didn't know that you didn't do those things because he was my first. He had sensory issues. Not all kids have sensory issues. When we start looking at our kids, remember that we look through a very different lens. We oftentimes don't have anything to compare normal to. Well, number one, there's no such thing as normal. There are typical kids, but there are no normal. So when we think about what it takes to be that gifted learner, and what parents notice when they're little can be all kinds of things. I do tell parents, if you have a question, seek an answer. Talk to someone. Share your concern. Because there's nothing worse than being in the dark and not knowing. So, this is one of my favorite cartoons. This is what we expect when someone says we have a gifted child. I love my school books. Just think, pretty soon we'll have read all of them. I like to read ahead and see what we're going to learn next. It's so exciting to know stuff. Having a book is like having a friend with you. If you flip the pages in my book, an animated T-Rex drives a Batmobile and explodes. Sometimes I think books are your only friends. We think of gifted kids as this child who is happily reading. And there are gifted kids like that. But in reality, we have this gifted kid. How's your diorama coming along? Almost finished. That didn't take too long. That's because I'm a genius. I don't see the Roadrunner. Aren't you supposed to put a Roadrunner in it? See the cotton balls glued down? Yeah, the Roadrunner just ran out of the scene and those are the clouds of dust. That's a gifted kid. That's a gifted kid. Why? Why is that a gifted kid? Because he took the situation, he recognizes that that cloud of dust symbolizes the Roadrunner, and he used the symbol. That's a gifted kid. Now what I have to be sure is that people are recognizing that that's a gifted kid. Anybody can put a Roadrunner in it. He took it one step further. Now there are people who would say, well, yeah, but he took the easy way out. Yeah, that's a gifted kid. Why do more than I absolutely have to? The teacher said to represent the Roadrunner. I got it. The Roadrunner's there. Don't you see the Roadrunner? He would have been right through here. How many of you have experienced that with your child? What's the easiest way to make this happen? That's the way I'm going to take it. Now, is there anything wrong with that? No. There's nothing wrong with that. And we need to recognize that it's okay for them to have circumvented the path. But what I don't want them to do is to not use that brain in the best way possible. So I need them to be able to explain to me what those cotton balls represent. And as long as you can explain that to me, okay, I get it. You represented the Roadrunner. What do we expect academically? We expect them to learn quickly. We expect them to have high achievement because, gifted kids get A's, right? Some do. Not all. We expect them to love school. In reality, they love learning. They don't necessarily love school. We expect them to be risk takers. When I hear that, I sometimes want to say, have you met a gifted kid? Because you see, if you take risks, there's the potential for you to be wrong. And I'm not out to be wrong. So it's safer to not take that risk. And in fact, I have gifted kids who would rather not do anything than take a chance that they might be wrong. Do we have to work beyond that? Yes. Because we can't live our lives never making mistakes. We also tend to think of them as kids who excel in all areas. You're gifted. You should be able to do this. Giftedness does not equal all-knowing. Gifted kids sometimes are high achievers, but if I had 100 gifted kids in this room, maybe 10 out of the 100 would be getting A's. Some of them would be getting A's and B's. Some of them would be getting B's. You'd have a group that were getting B's and C's. You'd also have a group that were getting C's and D's. And you also might have a group that were getting D's and F's. My oldest child, all through school I heard the same thing. Oh my goodness, he has such potential. Yeah, I'm aware. He was a sophomore in high school. He was taking an advanced calculus class. He was getting a C by the skin of his teeth. Teacher called him in, said, I need to talk. Sat down. She said, he's almost at a D. I said, okay. John, are you doing the homework? Yes, ma'am. John, are you turning in the homework? Yes, ma'am. John, I don't understand. You have a 14.2% for a homework average. Well, Mom, I do enough of the homework to be sure that I understand the content. Do you question my understanding of the content? So I looked at his teacher and I said, so, what are his quizzes like? What are his tests like? And she said, well, he doesn't have anything less than a 96 on a quiz or a test. Okay, I don't question your understanding of the content. So I said to him, John, the teacher grades the homework. And his response to me was very typical of what a gifted child says. That is her problem, not mine. Okay, I can't argue with that. Now, I was very lucky in that he did have a teacher who said to him, look, you drop below a 95 on any test or quiz I give you and you do every homework problem. You stay above a 95, I don't care if you do any of the homework. I won't penalize you for it. Now, did he do more of the homework to make sure that he stayed above that threshold that she gave him? I don't know. I don't know how to do calculus. He might have. I don't know. Either way, he got out of it what he needed to get out of it. Gifted kids get out of learning what they want, and that's oftentimes very frustrating for us because we want this and they want this. And sometimes the two don't match. And I will tell you right now, butting heads and getting into a power struggle with a gifted child never works. You lose. They are excellent, excellent, excellent negotiators. Don't play the power struggle game. Listen to your child and try to help them understand where you're coming from, but you also have to understand where they're coming from. So when we think about academics, that's the kid we think of. That's a high achiever. There's nothing wrong with having a high achiever, and some of our gifted kids are high achievers. And if you have a high achieving gifted child, pat yourself on the back. You're golden. But if you have a gifted child that maybe is getting B's and C's, understand that that doesn't mean they're not gifted. And the more you push them, the more they will push back. Gifted kids don't necessarily get high grades. I have parents who say, well, when he took the AZM 3, the AZM 2, he took the AZ Merit, and he didn't do very well, right? Because that's a gifted kid. A lot of gifted kids don't excel on that type of a test because they overthink it. Now, we do have some that excel, but we have an equal amount that don't. So let's talk about the unexpected. This is the part of that gifted child that nobody remembers to tell you about. They like to learn, and they don't necessarily like school. Because for many of them, they don't equate school with learning. They are not motivated by grades. Grades don't matter to them. It's all about the learning. They get quickly bored because all they are, they're seeking an answer to something, and once they have that answer, they're done. which is one reason why it is not unusual to have a gifted child with multiple projects going at the same time. And I tell parents, they are the greatest starters in the world. They don't necessarily finish anything. They start. Well, what's happening is they're starting and getting the answer that they were looking for, and now they're done. I got the answer. So why do I need to continue this? Well, because your teacher needs a finished product. But I have the answer. Can't I just tell her the answer? No. You need to finish the product. These are kids who actually need to be taught perseverance. Explicitly taught perseverance. Because I'll ask, how do we learn to persevere? How do you learn to persevere? By having to persevere. Well, oftentimes, gifted learners don't experience the need to persevere until 4th, 5th, 6th grade. Some of them don't experience it until high school. If I don't experience the need to persevere, I don't know how. I don't know how to struggle. And then when I'm in a situation where I actually do struggle, I panic. Because if I'm struggling, that must mean something's wrong. No, there's nothing wrong. You're just struggling. And struggling is okay. I get calls from parents that say, my child is struggling on this concept. Okay. Well, he's never struggled before. Okay. Struggling is not bad. Struggling is actually good. Because we're not learning if we don't engage in productive struggle. But understand, I have sat at that table with that gifted learner who is, my teacher won't help me. It's terrible, Mom. Your teacher is helping you. Your teacher's letting you struggle. I don't like struggling. Can't you just give me the answer? No. I need you to work through it. Then you don't love me either. No, I do love you, and that's why I need you to work through it. Allow your learner to struggle. Let them bump up against that wall and figure out that I'm okay. I tell parents, if we don't teach your child anything else in elementary school, I hope we teach them to fall flat on their face and realize that they can pick themselves up, dust themselves off, and the sun is going to shine tomorrow. Mrs. Brown, I failed the test. You did. Okay. What did we learn from that? My study method doesn't work. Okay, what was your study method? Well, I don't exactly have one. Well, maybe that's our problem. Let's try this. In our society, we have decided that making mistakes is wrong. No, it's not wrong. It's good. And we've decided that failure shouldn't be an option. But everyone in this room, I would be willing to bet, has failed at something. And yet, look at you, you're all here. We fail at things. It's okay. I tell kids, as long as you fail forward, you're fine. Failing forward simply means, what did you learn from the failure? Oh. Well, I'm going to have to think about that. Good. Good. Think about that. Because every time you are unsuccessful, you learn something that helps you make your next guess, that helps you go one step further. So, do you have an idea for your story yet? No, I'm waiting for inspiration. You can't just turn on creativity like a faucet. You have to be in the right mood. Well, what mood is that? Last minute panic. Yeah. Gifted kids are the kings and queens of procrastination. Because unfortunately, they are able to whip things out and move forward. I want them to understand about perseverance and learn how to persevere. But I also recognize when that perfectionism gets in their way. Perfectionism means that you can never fail. You always need approval, and if you come in second, you're a loser. We have gifted kids who have perfectionism on steroids. They are so perfectionistic that they would rather not try than be wrong. And I have parents who say, I didn't teach them that. I know you didn't teach them that. Somehow it's just internal. I had a mom of a fourth grader who attended a presentation that I did, and she said, I listened to your presentation where you talked about when the child brings home a paper and they got 18 out of 20 right, and the mom says to them, honey, what happened? We studied those two. And she said, I sat there thinking, oh, what kind of a parent would say that? And she said, not a week later, my daughter brought home an assignment that she had obviously worked very hard on. It was not a perfect paper, but she had done a really good job. And her dad was out of town, and I said to her, you know what? Let's put this up on the refrigerator so that your dad can see it when he gets home. She said, my daughter grabbed the paper out of my hand, crumpled it up, and threw it away. And she looked at me and she said, Mommy, perfect papers go on the refrigerator. That's not a perfect paper. And this mom looked at me and she said, I stood there thinking, I taught her that. I didn't mean to, but I taught her that. Because when she would bring home a perfect paper, when she'd bring home that 100, that A+, we always put it on the refrigerator. She said, I didn't even realize that we were doing that. Sometimes we do things and we don't realize that our learner is internalizing that. So, from a social emotional perspective, what's the expected? Well, we expect gifted kids to have lots of interests. Many of them do. Many of them have an unbelievable number of interests. We expect them to start and want to do lots of things. And sometimes we get frustrated when they don't finish. We expect them to want to be overbooked. They get overcommitted. Mom, I want to do guitar, and I want to do soccer, and I want to do, and all of a sudden they've got this handful of things that they want to do, and they get overbooked. Downtime for a gifted learner is essential because they need to decompress. If your gifted learner hops in your car after school and starts talking, awesome. Just listen. But if your gifted learner was like one of mine and hops in the car and is quiet, leave them alone. Our tendency is to, so how'd your day go? What did you do? How was school? Did you have fun? And we start that questioning process. And all of a sudden, they're melting down. My son finally got to the point where he would go, Mom, stop. Can we just ride in silence? He didn't want the radio on. He didn't want his brothers and sisters to talk. Nothing. I said, well, you can't turn them off. So you're going to have to just put earplugs in and pretend you don't hear them. Because that's the way it is. But he didn't want to talk to me right then. Now later, after he'd had a chance to decompress a bit, then I could have that conversation about how was your day, what's going on, how are things going. But not right away. He needed time. We are a society that wants so much for our children that sometimes research says we overbook them. We get them doing too many things. So, you know what I like about summer days? They're just made for doing things, even if it's nothing. Especially if it's nothing. There is nothing wrong with having time to do nothing. To having that downtime. To make a choice of what I want to do as a learner. And sometimes I don't want to do anything. I just want to think. Sometimes I just want to not think. That's okay. That's okay. So, what about the social emotional that they forget to tell you about? The piece that we struggle with. The fact that gifted kids oftentimes have difficulty with relationships. They have difficulty making connections sometimes. Because remember, they have that asynchrony. So intellectually, I'm here, and I want to talk about these things. But developmentally, I'm here. I used to laugh and say, it would be so helpful if when I needed to talk to my child, if a little light would light up on their head and tell me which child I was talking to. Am I talking to my 8-year-old, which is your developmental level? Or am I talking to the 16-year-old, which is your intellectual level? Who am I having a conversation with? Because they're very different conversations. Understanding that asynchrony is just part of who we are. And I don't want to change that, but I need to recognize it. That's why we say, don't grade skip your child. When we grade skip, we take childhood away. Children have a lot of time to be adults. They don't have very much time to be children. And we always want to value the fact that you're 5. You need to be 5. You're 9. You need to be 9. I get that you have conversations and you can read at a high school level. I don't want you reading high school text. It's not appropriate. And that then becomes the challenge that we have as parents, trying to figure out, all right, well then what do I have them read? And that's where we have to pull from that classic literature, and we have to pull from junior grade books and the College of William and Mary, and pull those materials that still give them the level of complexity that they need, but don't get them into topics that I'm like, I don't need an 8-year-old reading that. They're not developmentally ready for it. That perfectionism gets in their way socially as well. They expect to be perfect at everything. So if I can't ride a bike the very first time I try it, forget it. I'm never going to ride a bike. If I can't swim the very first time I try, gee, my son expected to climb in the pool and swim. You don't climb in the pool and swim. You climb in the pool and sink. He turned right around, got out of the pool, not doing it. He said, honey, you have to learn how to swim. No, I don't. A lot of people don't know how to swim. I said, well, you have to learn how to swim. No, I don't. He wasn't willing to take that chance. We have many of these kids will share that they don't feel like people understand them. People just don't get me. And we also have over-excitability, which we're going to talk about. Look, a decoder ring. Wow, we can send each other secret messages in code. Haha, now mom and dad won't be able to understand us at all. Not that they do anyway. They're hard to understand sometimes. Just when I think we've got them figured out, they take another turn. But we need to help them understand that even though I may not understand you, I love you. I love you. I don't understand you, but I love you. So let's talk just a little bit about overexcitability. There's a wonderful book called Living with Intensity. And if you have a child who has overexcitability, I strongly recommend that book. It's phenomenal. Because the first time I read it, I thought, okay, so he does know my child. Because he was describing my son. Word for word. It's kind of scary. So let's think about a few of them. A child who needs answers to detailed questions over and over, and they just can't let it drop. That's an intellectual overexcitability. When that happens, give them time to find answers to calm that overexcitability. Because when you don't, it doesn't go down. It doesn't go away. And they just become more frustrated. They can be very frustrating with their why questions. Well, why? Well, why? And we get annoyed and we get frustrated and we use the standing response, because I said so. That's why. That's not an answer. It's the one my mom used. It doesn't work for gifted kids. We also have that gifted child who is highly creative, and they get so involved in a movie, in a fictitious book world, in a fictitious computer game, that they eat, sleep, drink it. They're immersed in that world. That's that child who has an overexcitability in that imagination category. Okay? Give them an outlet for that. Give them a way that they can show you the world that they're living in. The excitement that's part of that world. We also have that child that cannot sit still. Constant movement. Constant movement. The leg moves, the arm moves, they twitch, some of them actually make noises as they and we have that tendency to go, sit still. If I could sit still, I would. I can't. That movement is part of that overexcitability. When I'm experiencing that, I encourage parents to find a way to allow them to get up and move. In a classroom, I used to walk over to them and my kids had a signal and I would tap their desk twice. If I tapped your desk twice, get up and walk around the room 3 times. With little ones, I had a little pass in an envelope. And I would put the pass in the envelope and hand the envelope. I need you to get this to Mrs. Myers right now. Okay, Miss Brown. Should I wait for an answer? Yes. You need to wait for an answer. She's going to look at what's in there and she's going to answer you. And then I need you to get back here on the double. Got it. And off they go. Now, Mrs. Myers' room happens to be on the other side of the building. But we needed to move for a few minutes. Because then when they came back, yeah, they'd been out of my room, 3, maybe 4 minutes. But they got some of that energy out, and now they can sit down. And Mrs. Myers knew that if a child shows up with an envelope, Mrs. Brown, I need you to look at this right away. She was to take it out. Tell her, yes, absolutely. No, tell her. And they would come back to class. Mrs. Myers says, yes, absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate that. We're just getting energy out. But to pretend and to constantly say to that learner, sit still, sit still, sit still, sit still. I can't sit still. I'm trying. That's why we put kids on balls. We put them on chairs that rock. We give them wiggle seats. Because if I have that motor excitability, it's just who I am. That child who is sobbing over a minor transgression that happened, their reaction is out of line with what should have been what we would consider a typical reaction. They're melting down over the fact that you are having spaghetti for dinner. I wanted mac and cheese. Their brother is sitting in their chair. They need their green pencil, and it broke, and now all they have are their blue pencils, but I can't write with my blue pencil. I need my green pencil, and they're crying. That overexcitability is an overload on that sensory system. Yes?
I have a question. Is something like where they perseverate on something?
That's what that is. They can't let it go. They just do over and over and over. Yeah. When that happens, we need to make sure that they get a chance to be heard. But we also need to remember that in that moment, I can't reason with you. So when you're trying to talk to me and reason with me, you're making it worse because you're giving me more sensory input. I can't take more sensory input. I'm melting down because of the sensory input I have. And I've actually had little ones just put their hand up, and people get all upset. He's being disrespectful. No, he's simply telling you, stop giving me input. I can't take any more input. I need time. I need time to shut myself down, and then we could talk about whatever this was. But that cool down period is critical for them because it gives me a chance to reset my brain. That same thing happens when you have a learner who is working on a problem and they're stuck, and you watch them start to escalate because they can't figure out the answer. And you watch their breathing go up, and they start clenching their fist, and they start hitting their foot, and they start, because I'm stuck. I'm perseverating and circling, and I tell kids it's a lot like the computer when it gets that little wheel. So what does that mean? And even kindergartners will tell you, oh, Miss Brown, that's the spinny wheel of death. I said, what do you mean? Oh, Miss Brown, when that thing starts going, you have no hope. You just have to shut your computer down and start over. I'm like, oh, you're kidding. Guess what? Your brain does that. It does? Mm-hmm. Sometimes your brain is in a little spinny wheel. We just got to shut it down and give it something else to talk about. So I tell kids, when that's starting to happen to you, I want you to push back. I want you to close your eyes. I want you to drop your hands to your side. I want you to count backwards from 20. 20, 19, 18, 17, 16. Did you know what happens when you're counting backwards? Your brain had to refocus. Because now it has to focus on remembering the numbers backwards. And it gave it a reset. I was working with a 7th grader, and he was really struggling, and I could tell that he was just getting agitated. And so I looked at him and I said, what'd you have for breakfast? He looked at me like, is she nuts? What a Pop-Tart. Oh, I love Pop-Tarts. What kind do you have? Strawberry. Really? Frosted or unfrosted? See, sometimes I like frosted, but sometimes I like unfrosted. But it was unfrosted. Oh, did you put it in the toaster, or did you eat it just cold? Just cold. Do you have anything to drink? Juice? Oh, what kind of juice? Orange. Oh, see, I don't like orange juice. I'm really more of an apple juice person. Okay, just go get back to work. He got back to work and he looked down and he went, oh, there's the error right there. I said to him later that morning, I said, you know why I asked you about breakfast? He looked at me and he said, because you were hungry? No. Because you needed to reset. And I needed to give you something else to think about so that then you could go back. That's all you're doing with that child. You're giving them an opportunity to reset. Give them that cool down period. Give them that opportunity to go somewhere else. An overreaction to a sound, an agitated behavior about reaction about clothing, that tag that's in the back of their shirt. I will tell you right now that I have a son who I always knew which shirt was his. It was the one with the hole in the back because he would cut the tag out. And in his effort to be sure that he got every single little piece of that tag, invariably there was a hole. And I would say, I will take the tag out for you. You won't get it all. You're right, there might be some minute little, no, I'll do it, Mom. I'll do it. So all of his t-shirts had holes in the back of them that I then had to sew up, and I had to sew them very carefully so that none of the thread could cause any irritation. It's a tag. Yeah. But it's driving me crazy. The goal is to see if you can get to the root of the problem. What is it that's irritating them and why? And then help them see if they can figure out a way to deal with that. Mom, my classroom is too bright. For some gifted kids, fluorescent lighting is a real issue. I've had kids that wore a visor to block some of it out. I have kids who were sitting in a classroom and, Mrs. Brown, it's so noisy in here. Darling, there's not a sound. Don't you hear it? No. What do I not hear? You don't hear the fan? Now, if I stop and think about it, yes, you're right, the fan is running. Mrs. Brown, it's so loud. How do you even focus? So then we have to practice learning to tune things out. And we practice that process of, okay, close your eyes, focus on the fan. Do you hear the fan noise? All right, we're going to count backwards from 10. And with every number you say, the fan is going to get quieter. And we practice helping them tune it out. Because they're not filtering it. They're hearing everything and getting stressed. So, these can make life really challenging for gifted kids. Now, do all gifted kids have overexcitability? No. But a good percentage do.
Another question when I think of these overexcitabilities, do you notice physical symptoms?
Sometimes.
Like headaches?
Headaches, stomach aches. You have to remember that these are kids who run. I'm gifted 24/7. I'm gifted all the time. And I am attempting, my brain is attempting to process every piece of information that it takes in. Now, my brain does not worry about a lot of information. It just tunes it out. Their brain does not. It is attempting to process everything, which is one reason why they get tired. Fatigue can be a real issue with gifted kids. I can remember my child standing at my bed. He was in second grade. It is 2 o'clock in the morning, and he's standing at my bed staring at me. Woke up, crying, tears running down his face. I'm like, hey, what's wrong? Are you sick? No. Mommy, I need you to turn it off. I admit my first reaction was, oh my God, what did you turn on? Probably shouldn't have been, but that was my thought. And then I realized that, no, he's talking about his brain. Mommy, I'm tired, and I want to go sleep, and it won't turn off. Can you turn it off? No. So we had to change his bedtime routine so that he had time to shut down because he needed more time than his brothers did. More time to shut down. But it can manifest in physical symptoms. Headaches, stomach aches. Unfortunately, sometimes when anxiety gets out of control, it can also manifest in kids who pull out their hair, kids who pick at themselves. So those are just things to watch for, because sometimes it can manifest in that way. So, yes.
What do you recommend for kids who have those physical manifestations?
Those physical ones? I try to work with that learner to figure out what is it that's raising your anxiety level. Sometimes it's because we have unintentionally placed them in an environment that is giving them stress. So that's why when we place a child in the comprehensive gifted program, I tell parents, you need to talk to me. Because if your child's anxiety is going up, we got a problem. This should not raise anxiety. If it does, and I need to back them back down because this isn't the right place for them. And it doesn't matter how high their test scores are. It's about how they're thinking and what it's doing to them internally. I encourage parents to be very open and honest with them and say, you know, I noticed that when these things happen, this is how you're reacting. How do these things make you feel? I feel out of control. I feel worried that I'm not going to do well. I feel, get them to talk if you can. I will tell you right now, the best place to get a boy to talk is in your car. Because you're driving, you're not looking at them. Don't look at them. If you look at them, they'll shut up. And you're driving, and they'll start spilling. And you can ask all kinds of questions in the car that they would never answer for you at home. Listen to your child and be willing to accept that maybe they don't need this right now. Maybe it's not the right place right now. I have learners that we back out of CGP. They're in cluster classrooms, they're in content replacement, and then 2 and 3 years down the road, they're back in CGP. But right now, I don't need this. And all you're doing is stressing me. I don't ever want to stress a child. Gifted kids come with some of their own anxiety issues that relate to that perfectionism. So the less I can put on that load for them, no 7-year-old should be stressed. No 5-year-old should be stressed. I don't want a 16-year-old to be stressed. They don't have the coping strategies to deal with that. I tell parents, raising a gifted child is probably the scariest ride you will ever go on, but enjoy every minute of it. Because the child you're raising will become a fantastic adult. And you are going to have so much fun on the ride if sometimes you just let go, raise those hands up, and scream right along with them. Have fun. All right. There were papers on your table if you had questions that you wanted to ask, or if you have a specific question about your learner, I would ask that you give me the paper and I will contact you. This is not a good forum to answer specific questions about your child, but I'm happy to answer general questions. Amy, can you turn that recording off for us because we don't need to